Hello, you are very welcome along to another RTÉ Rugby podcast. Final week of the Guinness Six Nations, and the championship is still very much up for grabs. Ireland against Scotland is 4:45 on Saturday, followed by France against England in Lyon. One of those four teams will be lifting the title. Meanwhile, in Cardiff, to open the day, Wales take on Italy, knowing they need a win to avoid finishing bottom of the table. To talk through everything, Johnny Murphy is back with us this week. Johnny, how are you today?
Yeah, all good. All good.
And coming to us from Cheltenham, give us a look at that view, Bernard. It's the John McKirrick of rugby. It's Bernard Jackman.
John McKirrick was more sane than me, but yeah, I'm in Cheltenham for a week. I'm living the dream at the moment. Twickenham to Cardiff to Preston Park to Cheltenham, and then I'm going to Lyon on Saturday. So certainly can't complain. But Willie Mullins, the three winners yesterday, Ireland 6 out of 7. We might have lost the rugby, but we're winning the battle for Cheltenham anyway. 6-1 at the moment.
Yeah. So you enjoyed England so much of the weekend, you decided to hang around for the week. Listen, we'll get straight into it. The dust has settled, obviously, on the defeat to England. We've all eaten our humble pie after, Ireland were Grand Slam champions-elect for the last few weeks. But we'll dive right into what happened on Saturday, because it just was an out-of-character performance and an out-of-character defeat. Bernard, to start at the end of the match, the final Marcus Smith's drop goal. The frustration, obviously, is that while England, I think most of us would agree England probably deserved to win, but Ireland should have won by virtue of the fact that they were leading with 90 seconds to play. We'll go through the final passage of the game, and it probably comes down to, there's three parts to it. First of all, there's the exit from Ireland to get out of their 22 with Conor Murray box kicking out of play. There's debate around what he should have done there. Then there's the defence off the line out initially to allow England to get into the Ireland 22 and up quite close to the line. And then there's the immediate lack of discipline in the 22. Like, there's three components to the way this result kind of fell apart in the last 88 seconds.
Yeah, and look at that. There's much, like even this week in Cheltenham, all people want to talk to me about is Conor Murray not kicking the ball, and why didn't we go into the keep ball scenario for the final couple of minutes? And I can see both sides of the argument. I think it was going to be risky against England to try and just play, 7 rooks, 8 rooks, and drag every last second out of those rooks and get the referee to say play it, because to be honest, we weren't winning any collisions for most of the game. We really struggled. We got round them 3 times, once in the first half, and obviously for the 2 tries for James Lowe. But we weren't going to get around it from there, because they would have filled the front line. And anytime we tried to play short, in fairness, we were getting caught man and ball. So I think physically, the impact that England had over those previous 78 minutes probably fed into Conor's decision. And also I think there was more fatigue than normal, because obviously we were highly stressed and we were chasing the game for a while, and we never could get away from him. Even that James Lowe try after half time, straight away they scored. Forbank got a try back, and we just couldn't pull away. And unfortunately, we looked like a team that weren't really confident in a tight game, and the France game wasn't tight, the Welsh game wasn't tight, the Italian game wasn't tight. So from that point of view, it's obviously something that Farrell will need to look at. And also, like, we had a makeshift back line, but that's the game. You want your bench to be able to come on, help you close it out. So I'm more disappointed with the line-out defence. So 4-man line-out is the line-out that New Zealand scored a try against us. I think we can see the one against Scotland as well in the World Cup. And it's not a line-out that normally teams would expect to make a big, significant line break, or I suppose get over the advantage line to the level they did. So, like, they also were down to 14 because Cunningham South had gone off, and we were 15. So basically, the simple match is 4-man lineouts. You've got extra forwards in the back line. You really should be getting them behind the gain line there, and we allowed them, get to wit, and then we went for the choke tackle option, which, if it had been successful, obviously is a key turnover, and then we win the game. But they get to ground, and we lose 2 bodies in the ruck. We have another player who has a look at the ruck So effectively, he's in no man's land. We get cut short on the same way play, and that allows Marcus Smith just get to outside Bundy or inside Bundy, but enough that Bundy has to hold for a second and put Fahey Wabosa away. He breaks a tackle, and then from there we give away a penalty, that breakdown. So that's the area I think Simon needs to be very disappointed with. Like, how can you let them? If you said we have a 4-man line out to defend, to win the game and stay in the Grand Slam hunt, I would say you take it all day long. And unfortunately, we just multiple defensive errors. I would say in that sequence that will really frustrate.
Johnny, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I kind of, one thing for me, I was just wondering about why there wasn't a maul called there, just to try and maul it and then try and get the ball possibly down further down the pitch. But yeah, I think the critical errors off that D line, like Bert has mentioned, 3 critical errors. If you make 3 critical errors within 2 or 3 phases, you're going to give up a try scoring opportunity or a penalty opportunity, which is what they got. I don't think, I'd be pretty strong, and I don't think there is an option for them to play out there. In the sense that people are saying, oh, why didn't we hold on to ball? I think referees are going to be so hard on any team that's trying to kill the clock inside their own 22, inside their own 10 meter. Everything has to be whiter than white. And with the level of fatigue there, the likelihood is someone is just going to lose control and potentially go off their feet, and you're going to be pinged straight away. So I don't personally think that the option is there to run the clock down in that area of the park when you're only 2 points up. And then, I think the final penalty that allows, Byrne, there's clear chat there from the referee to release, which, you're giving them an opportunity at a drop kick, a free shot at a drop kick with an easier penalty to come rather than the one out wide. So yeah, that's kind of the frustration. But there's analysing that last 60 seconds off the line out D, I think is where is where people need to be talking about and what happened and how that happened for them.
Yeah, and like we'll say on the kick itself, it was one of those kicks where if Conor Murray had made that exit in the 55th minute, it's a perfectly reasonable exit out of the 22, up to 40 meters, decent-ish kick. And then the flip side as well is, as I've seen a couple of people point out, that, you have players, particularly substitutes as well, who are looking on at these matches from early on, and they're trying to pick out things that are going on in the game to bring on when they're coming on. And I'm sure Conor Murray and other players would have seen Ireland kicking loosely to England a couple of times in that first half, kicking a little bit too deep, and England running in a try from Ollie Lawrence and almost running in a second try then, the one in the first half as well that was disallowed for the knock on. So, at the same time, if we're saying they should have got James Lowe into position and gone for a longer, deeper kick, England showed during that game as well they were just as capable of running it back from deep, and they were very, very threatening. I might move on to the discipline now though, guys, because this is emerging as a trend now for Ireland in the Six Nations. They've conceded 45 penalties in 4 games. The penalty count, Bert, was down a decent bit from the last game. It was only 8 penalties, which is actually, you'd probably consider it a reasonable enough number in the grand scheme of things. But it's the context and where those penalties were given away and how they were given away that's incredibly frustrating. When you look at 2 in the first half that were just right on the edge of the 22 in really, really dangerous positions. You had the one that came from the last line out where Peter O'Mahony comes back and makes the tackle on Ben Earl and then gives away the yellow card because he's in a desperate situation and he goes off his feet. And then you have England breaking into the 22 in the last play of the game and quickly just picking off 2 penalty advantages that allowed them to kick the match-winning drop goal. In addition to all of that, we've had 4 yellow cards in 4 games. And in the previous 29 matches, Ireland had 3 yellow cards. And you just look at the flurry of penalties across these 4 games as well, and the way they fall, where they're falling in little bunches. The France game in particular, where there was, I think, 8 out of the 13 penalties in those games can be attributed to the 2 little short little bursts before both of those French tries. Similar at Wales as well, where they gave them away in flurries, and that's all. James Ryan yellow carded and Ty Burns sent to the bin. It's getting to a point now where as soon as a team gets into the Irish 22, you're getting very, very concerned that a penalty is going to follow.
Yeah, 100%. And I did this bit of research when I was in Grenoble around momentum and what gives you momentum, what kills your momentum, and obviously things like a choke tackle or a big hit can actually, have a huge effect on the outcome. But back-to-back penalties against you normally end in big trouble. And Ireland have shown tendency to do that recently. I mean, the yellow cards part of it, when you compare it to our discipline beforehand, before into the World Cup, etc., that was a big point of difference for us, and it's just slipping. And I would say a lot of down to the players. I mean, some very sloppy ones, like not rolling away to breakdown. They do know that if especially off a positive carry, if you're the tackler or tackle assist, if you're anyway lingering around the wrong side of the ruck there, you're going to get pinged. And Ireland and these same players have been really, really good at avoiding that situation. And now over the last 3, 4 or 4 games, you're seeing little, I would say it's laziness, sloppiness more so than laziness, sloppiness at times. And it cost us the game for sure. It cost us the game because England, it could have cost us the game before that last drop goal. I mean, let's not forget England missed 12 points from the booth. England, in fairness, I thought were the more dangerous side, and I think they deserve massive credit. Like, discipline was a big part of us not being at the races, but there was way more than that. Way more than that. Physically, our sharp passing game wasn't effective. There wasn't the same punch on the carries because of that ferocity of the England defence, because of the physicality that they brought, how they targeted our breakdown. And we didn't have quick ball, and we looked more than human. We didn't look like the best side in the world at all. We're still a very good side, but they made us look human, and that is it's not rocket science. I mean, if you look at Ireland's numbers put into the game, you have to slow the ball down. You have to make 2-man hits. You can't let them break you in the middle of the field. And England, to be fair, have been building towards that defensively, and they put in probably a more complete defensive performance. But the thing that didn't show in the past was to be able to attack against Ireland, that we had those obvious weaknesses. If you kick long to us against us, sorry, if we kick long to you, we haven't looked as vulnerable to be ripped apart as we did on Saturday, and that's down to some really good work off the ball by England, really good intent by England, really good execution. But again, you should be able to keep the ball long and not concede a try or potentially 2 tries, which we nearly did. And I totally agree with you. I think if you were this coaching staff or whatever, you're Conor Murray, you feel a lot better getting that ball off the field than you do giving England a chance to run back at you, because we just didn't seem to have the same spacing, the same line integrity, the same calmness that we had. But I think it comes from England's pressure, to be fair. I don't think it's an arrogance or anything like that. It was just literally we were shell-shocked, a little bit like we were against New Zealand. And that is the roadmap to beat Ireland. But realistically, in the world, only South Africa, New Zealand, England, and France, if they're tuned up, have that capacity, I think, have that physicality and power to do it. But that's the reality is they're the teams we need to beat. We had a chance on Saturday, and we weren't good enough on the day.
You listed out some teams there. Do you think Scotland are in that bracket? Like,
No.
Even with the ability to, like, they've got great broken field runners, and so many of the penalties Ireland conceded were off the back of a line break, and all of a sudden you're scrambling. Do you see Scotland being able to put Ireland under that level of pressure?
No, because I think I really admire the Scottish backs, and for sure they can ask questions of us. But like, England had the complete package. Whether you're talking about, I thought Forbank was electric. I know he had a couple of errors, but he was electric. Faye was also, couldn't be stopped on the gain line. Alex Mitchell, brought unbelievable tempo. Both centres were decent. But the pack, this is what Scotland don't have. They don't have, like, Ben Earls has carried, I think, the 3rd most meters in the championship. The next forward on the list is at 18. You know what I mean? So like back rows don't hit the top 5 in meters carried in general. And he was outstanding. I thought that like Ollie Chesney isn't normally a 6, but himself, George Martin, Atoje, like they just made it incredibly difficult for us. And it wasn't actually a match that was really like they picked a massive pack, but it wasn't the set piece that cost us. It was actually just in general play, their ability just to monsters. I felt, and I like I'm not being reactive to one game, but when you see England play like that, and you look at some of those players, and at first that's why I was very respectful of England going into the competition. You know what I mean? Because I think the fact they've lost 3 Premiership clubs, well, it's horrific. You know, 9 teams increases the quality of those teams. They've been good in Europe when they've been tested. Some of the rugby in the Premiership have been great, and then they went into the first 3 rounds and they were just kind of ticking along. And I don't know if you saw Bernard's interview afterwards. He spoke about emotionally, you know, Jamie George's mother, Danny Care's 100 cap, the fact they felt slighted by the media, saying they were the worst English team of all time, and that's where the reaction came from. And that's fine. But I think we were right to question them, because when we looked at those players, they should have been better. Unfortunately for Ireland, they put it together against us. But if they can back this up against France this week and find a different reason to have that emotional intensity, England are not far better place, but England are probably in a better place than we are in terms of depth. I mean, you know, like there's certain positions that we maybe don't have ready-made replacements, and so you see Keane Healy and Conor Murray and Peter Manny still being integral to our challenge, but there's no obvious replacements like down the road for them. You know what I mean? In terms of 3, 4, and 5 behind them, so that's a challenge for Farrell, and not even just Farrell, whoever takes over from when he goes in the sabbatical over the next 12 months to basically make sure when he comes back, and that Six Nations after that World Cup year, that we have sufficient depth in all the key positions.
That brings us then, Johnny, on to, I think, potential changes for this weekend. It's up in the air, I suppose, whether Calvin Nash or Kieran Frawley are going to be available. They're both following the return to play protocols at the moment for the head injuries they picked up. Nash he played some part in training yesterday. Frawley wasn't there at the HPC, so I don't know, maybe reading the tea leaves, it looks maybe that more likely that Nash would be available than Frawley would be. If Frawley isn't available, do you think that means you're probably looking at a 5-3 bench rather than a 6-2?
Oh yeah, well I think you have to with 10 cover. You know, Frawley just gives you the option to go 6 and 2, so 10 cover, and then you'd probably look at maybe Gary Ringrose back in the mix then as well. So you'd probably look at Ross Byrne and Gary Ringrose on the bench, or depending on whether they want to change around what the center pairing. But yeah, I think if Frawley is out, and then they have no other option really to go but to go 5 and 3, because you're very short then. If you have to have a 10 on the bench, you're then more than likely you're going to rejig a lot to fit around who goes where in terms of that versatility role, and that's what Frawley gives you off the bench.
Yeah, I just on that, I think that 6-2 was a better option with James Ryan on the bench than Ian Henderson. I think when James Ryan became injured, it increased the argument to go 5-3 against England. I just don't think Ian Henderson is playing that well at the moment, and has the same impact that Ryan had showed the previous week against Wales. And I think obviously we have 2 injuries, and is that going to be very fresh in Farrell's mind? It did affect the game, the fact that we lost Calvin Nash so early and put big pressure on our 6-2. But just as importantly, I think the fact is, with James Ryan injured, I think we can probably go back to 5-3. But obviously we don't have that. His ability to come on and wreak havoc is now no longer an option.
Well, then you took the answer potentially of the question I was about to ask straight out of my mouth. If Ireland were going to a 5-3 this weekend, who would be the forward to miss out? Do you think it's Ian Henderson?
Between Henderson, yeah. I also think there's an argument to start Ryan Baird.
But then
I think
if Ryan Baird starts,
yeah,
then Ian Henderson surely is on the bench, is he?
yeah, I know. Sorry, that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem. But then, yeah, I just think that I think it was very unfortunate the way it unfolded for Baird. Obviously, Pete, I would imagine, was getting close to his game time on Saturday when he got the yellow card. And then obviously then Baird doesn't come on in the 69th minute. And in a game like that, where power and athleticism was at an absolute premium, I think, him being out for the last half hour, even though we were, outplayed at certain times, I think he still could have won the game. He has that ability to do something. I also think there's maybe an argument, I sound like I'm hating Henderson here, I'm not. But I think if you are going to make a change in the lock situation earlier, as you did, I would have put him in the second row first, and then I would have moved him to the back row and I brought on Henderson to be getting. I just think his form is so good at the moment. He should be the first guy on, particularly against a team like England who have, the likes of George Martin and Ollie Chesham, etc., and Ben Ayres. Like, they're very powerful, very strong. And yeah, just at the moment, Hendo hasn't had a massive run of form, and he's had lots of niggles, and he's capable of having a big game. I think he's class, but at the moment, I just think Baird is the one that we should be trying to get on the field either to start or as early as possible.
Moving towards I suppose the overall picture of the Six Nations, Johnny, Grand Slam is gone, and I think it probably came as a big shock to a lot of people because I think so many people, once Ireland won in France, it just automatically seemed for so many people that this was going to be a procession. And I suppose with the way England had been playing as well, in fairness, there was evidence there to suggest that Ireland were overwhelming favourites. It's a funny one though, because I think coming into the tournament, Johnny, if you had offered Irish fans, okay, you've got Joe McCarthy's going to be bled into the team this year as well. Calvin Nash obviously is in his first Six Nations campaign, and crucially Jack Crowley taking over the reins from Johnny Sexton at out half. And I think I know it's still not done yet, but if Ireland win this weekend, obviously they win the title itself rather than the Grand Slam. If you had offered that to most Irish fans before the start of this championship, I think 99% of them would have bitten your hand off. And here we are this week, and so many people are using the words consolation prize to talk about the trophy itself.
Yeah, well, I don't think Grand Slams are won, they're won very easily. So
Yeah.
I think people just need to reassess that. Now there was a big opportunity for them, and I think that will frustrate them in that moment straight after the game. But Andy Farrell's comments straight after, they have a job to do now to go win a championship, and he was very clear in his after-match comments that his job is to make sure that people realize that over the next 24 hours and get in and get to work to get that done. History will show that back-to-back Grand Slams are very, very, very hard to do. But I do think there will be and I think the frustration is, the frustration is fair because the opportunity was there with 90 seconds to go to be in a position to go and get the whole thing. But yeah, they have to do a job. They have to dust themselves off, and that will be kind of the mark of the team in terms of putting a performance and a collective performance together and sorting out the issues that we've spoken around, the discipline, the areas that they're giving away those penalties, and then being a physically dominant side that they need to be over on Saturday, because that was an area that that they got hurt in, was that physical edge.
Is one thing, and I think is the England game at the weekend was a fantastic example of it, Bernard, and Scotland will be again this weekend. If you look back at Ireland's great run now over the last couple of years, the only two defeats, New Zealand in the World Cup and England at the weekend, and both of those I think most people would consider were those teams' best performance of recent years. Is that a fact now that Ireland just have to deal with? They have got to this point and their form has been so good over the last couple of years that they now have a reputation that's really, really high. And every week they are getting the best version of the opposition. That when the fixtures come out at the start of the season, there's a pin put in the game that says Ireland on whatever date, and that is the game that teams are looking for. 4 or 5 years ago, that probably wasn't the case with Irish teams, but this is something they have to deal with now.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, that's very valid, but it can't be an excuse. That's always been the case, and always will be the case in sport or business or life. You know, the teams the people that are top set the benchmark. So everybody else is striving to knock them off it. And that's the challenge the All Blacks have had over the years, where an All Black scalp was something everyone sought after, and they were very good at managing to be very consistent and have a high win ratio. But again, they haven't won every World Cup, and that's something that I think Ireland want to be where they want to be, and it's the ultimate as a sports person or team to be the team who consistently can win no matter who they play against or what emotional cause that the opposition have. And I think it's just getting back out now. It's getting back, win the Six Nations, still a very good achievement. And then fix their defence, which was only scored in one game to be fair, but that's probably down to I didn't think England were going to win, but I did think that we had the easier games so far because of the way France were.
Yeah.
And I think you had to step it up against England. We weren't good enough on the day, and now there'll be no excuse if we lose to Scotland, and that's not like Scotland showed again against Italy that they're not great at being consistent. The problem for them is they shouldn't have the front five to do what England did to us if we bounce back.
Let's move it on to Scotland then, because I think the last few years in particular, Johnny, as well, while Ireland have dominated this game, 9 wins in a row over Scotland, there's a hell of a tasty rivalry that's developed between the two teams. They really, really don't like each other. And I think a lot of it probably stems back to some of the games between like your Munster team and Glasgow, when there was a really, really good rivalry between those two teams, and there was plenty of niggle in it. And I think it's spilled over into the national sides in recent years. You just look back to the World Cup when there were a couple of flare-ups as well. The Netflix documentary, it was put to Tig Byrne yesterday that there were a couple of scenes in it where Gregor Townsend or Stuart Hogg gave a decent impression that they weren't too impressed with how they've been perceived in the Irish media and by the Irish players over the last few years. I'll read you out what Byrne had to say when he was asked about it. He says, "The Scots are the Scots. We have our perception of them, and I'm not going to verbalize it here because they've given us ammo in the past from what they've said in the media, and I'd be surprised if it was any different this week." I'm expecting some fireworks this Saturday.
Yeah, look, I think Birch has talked about this before. Scotland are a good side, but they've been trying to generate their own momentum. So, the last time, after the French game, they were trying to cling on to, they should have won. And, Birch was like, it's like they're trying to drive momentum. All the pressure was on them against England to perform and win that game. But you look at how England performed in the first 15 to 20 minutes, Scotland weren't in that game. And then, it was probably England's errors that brought them back into the game. This weekend, I don't think it was, you look how they played against Wales. They started so well and then second half fell apart. Very similar performance to that this weekend. They went up, they started well, they got ahead. They just needed to put their foot down and close out the game and go and do it. But they didn't. And, to be fair, Italy came back. They played some great stuff, scored some great tries, and really put them under massive pressure. And they couldn't really deal with that in the last, kind of 10, 15 minutes. They got themselves back within a score. But, they looked in the last kind of 60 to, I think it was 28, 29 phases that they went in the last play. But they weren't really going anywhere. They looked lost, particularly in those phases of 24 to 28. And that created, they were forcing it then, trying to get that opportunity. But I don't see how, with how they've performed, and they've been so up and down, not just from game to game, but also in game. you know, they're obviously going to have periods where they're going to put Ireland under pressure, but I just don't see, you know, I don't see it. They've overpromised and underdelivered, I think, in this Six Nations, given how they've been talking about themselves and what they've been trying to do.
First, do they put too much stock into beating England? And is that kind of, are they fixating on that a little bit too much? Because since 2018, they've beaten England 5 times, and on 4 occasions they have lost their next game. Two of those were to Wales. One was to Ireland back in 2018, and most recently now against Italy, where they've had excellent wins, one-off wins against England. And it's not even a case of not backing it up over the course of a championship. It is just the immediate aftermath that they've consistently fallen flat in.
Look, it's a huge game for them. It's a huge game for their fans. And you know, we've seen over the last couple of years how they've celebrated that and how they've wanted to make a big deal about it, the warm tenants in the dressing room, and you know, et cetera, et cetera. But the problem is, the lack of consistency. Like I think this team, you know, like look at there's teams where you know you don't have the talent and you just got to try and mind them and get them through. But for Gregor Townsend, he just sees this team who under day are capable of beating most teams. To be fair, I think if it all fell right for them, it could beat most teams. But just let themselves down. Like France were there for the take, and they found a way to lose that. The Italians are improving. But look, if you want to talk about yourself being a generational side, you know, and you've beaten England, you've beaten Wales, you've got a bonus point against France. You've got to be able to go to Italy and win. And they just, like, I know the change of sports psychologists, and I don't think their pack are forced, whatever, but they should be better than they are, and they would just drive you mad, I think, if you're a Scottish fan, because they can't just be this team. If this team don't do something like win a Triple Crown at least over the next 2 or 3 years, like the next generation are really poor. I mean, like, let's be honest, they've been very smart in terms of the project player over the last 7 or 8 years. Their underage system is a disaster. Italy hammered them in that in their 20s the other night. They're just not strong. They're not strong. And I would be worried about Scottish rugby unless this team actually get their finger out and start to bring some more consistent results. And yeah, of course, obviously there's a risk on Saturday, but you just wouldn't fancy them strongly, unless Ireland really underperform. And I would say perform at a level way below what I played against England, which I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked by, but it could happen.
Yeah, like Tom English in the BBC Scotland podcast, I've heard him say quite often that you mentioned it there, like what's coming down the line for Scotland in terms of under-20s and pathways. Like, these are the good days right now. These are, by relative standards for Scottish rugby now, like the glory years that they need to be capitalizing on, because it's not going to get better in the next 10 years with what's coming down the line. But back to this current Scotland team, Johnny, and as Birch said, like, they are capable of probably beating most teams if they get everything right on the day. But is the issue with them that they play up and down to the level of their opposition? That if they're playing, like, you know, if they're playing a world-class team, they can bring themselves up to, I know, not necessarily win all the time, but they can give them a right good game. But equally, they can come right down to the poor level of a bad team.
Yeah, I think they just struggle for consistency across the board. Now, you look at the World Cup and how they performed at the World Cup. I know the draw obviously put them under massive pressure, but you know, you listen to some people in terms of how they describe the intensity of the Irish game in the World Cup, and that, you know, they have one of the Scottish players, you know, he was on the rugby pod before, and he was saying that, like, the intensity that of that game, they've never experienced anything like it. So that's in the back of their mind. Again, South Africa, you know, they perform to a level, but they, you know, they seem to be dropping off when they play those top level sides. Now, England was a performance, but after how England played at the weekend, who was that down to, or what was that down to, would be a question you'd have to ask. But their overall form, I just don't think is consistent enough, regardless of what they're saying. And they played, like they were, I think what was 22-10. They were up. They seemed to be cruising. And then they just let Italy back into the game. And to be fair to Italy, if you give them a chance at the moment, they're going to take it. Like they've done what a turnaround it's been from the World Cup for them. And how they're playing, and the level of physicality they're playing at, but also the width that they're putting on the ball and the options that they have with ball and play are very, very good. So yeah, I just think it's a major consistency issue that they just can't nail down, and that's there for everyone to see over their performances over the last 4 weeks, over the last 4 games.
Consistency aside, then let's talk about a one-off game this weekend. For them to win a one-off game this weekend against Ireland, what has to go right for them, Johnny, and where can they trouble Ireland?
They need to play on top of Ireland. They need to get after Ireland's. They have to have a physical edge to them that we probably haven't seen before in terms of the breakdown. They have to try and sucker punch Ireland early and try and do what England did and start with a ferocity and intensity that England did. It was like a boxer getting a punch in the ribs early in the fight. He was struggling to breathe then throughout the rest of it. That's what they have to do, and then Finn Russell has to, he has to play to the top of his game because he's such a linchpin for them. He has to kick well. He has to get space, and then I think in the counter attack, they really need to put Ireland under pressure. They need to win those races like England did last week. The centres won those races when the ball went in behind them compared to Ireland, but that was because of the pressure that Ireland were being put under by England. And I think Ireland will need to underperform in terms of their defensive aspect, their defensive part of the game, to let Scotland get into the game and run their shapes. But they need to, Finn Russell his long balls are a massive strength of his game, but playing against a side like Ireland that bring plenty of line speed, that can also be a big hindrance. And they need to win that gain line battle to be able to to play that. So it's all going to come today, I think. And Bert has already referenced it, that physical edge, 1 to 8, they really need to bring it.
And Bernard, like we mentioned, obviously the fact that there's huge pressure on Scotland after how poorly they performed at the weekend, but there's also enormous pressure on Ireland now this weekend, because if they were to lose a Six Nations championship after 3 bonus point wins from 3, then you're into territory where you're asking questions about like multiple aspects of what's going on in this team, not just a bad defense in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, and that's how quickly it turns. I mean, last week Sam Morton said we're the best team in the world, and everyone's going, "Oh, it's so logical. Sure, you're the best production line, you're the best system, centrally contracted, blah 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 blah, alignment, cohesion, everything." And if you lose against Scotland, everything is in doubt. But look, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be in doubt. We still have a very good system. We still have a very good team. But it will be a massive blow. It will be a massive blow to this team. And that's why I don't see it happening. I think I would be disappointed if we don't get the same reaction and improvement in performance that England got after their Scotland defeat. You know what I mean? And the only difference is we don't have 2 weeks to fix it, which obviously England had. We'd have.
But sometimes is it better to only have the week to respond?
Yeah, maybe. Look at it. Yeah, well, look at it. I think England and Ferris were a little bit different in that they really are changing how they're playing. You know what I mean? So we could see what they're trying to do defensively, and that took a massive step forward in the 4th week. And attack-wise, everything fell into play. So maybe that extra week was massive. I actually don't think we need to fix it a lot. We don't need to change a lot in terms of what we're doing. We just need to do it better again. And it's a perfect opportunity for us at home in front of our home fans with a championship on the line against a team that we know we can beat, and have done so in big games regularly in the past. So, yeah, I feel a lot better about it Saturday night, but I don't I don't see us falling in their face here.
All right. Well, before we finish up, I do want to bring up the other big story that's been going on in Irish and French rugby over the last few days. Antoine Frisch called up by France on Sunday. So Munster centre Antoine Frisch drafted into the France squad. As we know, he's French born, he's Irish qualified and also qualified to play for England as well. Played for Emerging Ireland in 2022, just after joining Munster. Didn't receive a senior call-up since then. So if he plays for France this weekend and becomes non-Irish qualified, that obviously could impact his ability to stay in Ireland beyond the summer of 2025 when his contract expires. This has obviously grated plenty of Munster fans because they've seen this movie before with Jean Klein going playing for South Africa last year, Ben Healy leaving Munster to go play for Scotland last year as well when he wasn't getting a look in when he wasn't getting a look in with Ireland. One for both of you. Johnny, I'll go to you first. If Antoine Frisch does play for France this weekend and becomes tied to France and potentially has to leave down the line, is this a big drop of the ball by the IRFU?
I don't think so. I think he wants to play, he wants to play international rugby. His pathway has led him to multiple opportunities for that from a residency perspective, or, how it's done. And yes, he was in that contention, but obviously the coaching staff at the moment feel that, he's pretty far down the depth chart in terms of the centres that are there. And, that's professional sport. He wants to play at the highest level possible. Yes, it does create, talking points around, should they have gone further and, potentially got him capped or played for Ireland A, that would lock him in. But then, what are you doing to the cap system in terms of just giving someone a cap to make sure that he's held here or that? So, they have to pick who they want on form. I don't think it's, what the consequences of him playing for Scotland are outside of the Irish system's control to a point over the next 4 or 5 days. But there are consequences if he does want to play for his, he's born in France, why not have why not go and do it? That'll be my opinion. It's the way that professional rugby works, and whatever happens after it, but you get on with it. And every rugby player that is playing professionally want to play international, and people have that goal the whole way until they retire. And if they get an opportunity to do it, best of luck to them.
Bernard?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we should have capped him just to cap him. I think, but having said that, I think he made a fair statement to come to Ireland to try and get capped, so I wouldn't have any issue with him on this situation. I think Galthy has been rumoured to be chasing him for a while. He's brought him into the squad. He may not pick him this week. I mean, it'd be a big call to pick him this week, I think, and cap him. So I think this situation, there's going to be time to solve it. If you look at the age profile of our centres, Dusky, who obviously Bayonne are chasing, Gary, Bundy, and Robbie, the age profile is fine, but Anton would be a lovely addition to that because I think he's a class player. My argument would be more the other side. I think if he used to become non-Irish qualified by virtue of playing for France, I don't think we should be shooting him out the door. I think that's another one of those ones where it's a freak-ish set of circumstances and just a little bit of leniency on it until his contract or his relationship with Munster reaches a natural end. Like Picamoles played for Northampton and played for France. It's very rare for French players to leave top 14 because obviously it's a phenomenal competition and very lucrative. But I think let's see how it plays out. But I would love to see the IRFU not treat this as a black and white situation for a while, so Munster don't get hurt by it.
What about the argument then, Bernard, some people have made where, we have Gary Ringrose, Bundy Aki, Robbie Henshaw, Stuart McCluskey. There's a long line of centres and a big depth chart. Some people have suggested, well, he's been playing very, very well for Munster. Why not get him into an extended camp at some point, kick the tires, see what he looks like, and maybe just by being involved, being around the environment, he might have felt, I'm I feel like I'm a little bit closer to getting selected here to keep players interested and keep players at the very least believing that they're involved? Or do you get into a situation where if you have too large an extended squad, you're into diminishing returns where players aren't getting the right number of reps?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's the second part of it. I think you could easily add to the squad and have no massive effect on it. But I think that's what Fabian's done. I think Galtier has done that. He's basically made a play that Antoine now will become on the radar of all the French clubs. Galtier may get a bit of credit from that from the French clubs because he's helping recruit a GIF player. And like I'd be probably more surprised if he's actually in the 20. If he's starting, I don't think he'll start. But if he's on the bench this weekend and becomes tied, I'd be surprised by that. But I think what Fabian has done is he's made a play that's going to cost him nothing bar the flight, and the upside could be that you get a player out of Ireland, and down the road he's available for France. But yeah, I wouldn't. I know likewise you could say, oh, Farage should have done the same thing, but yeah, I don't think there's any risk to bringing training squads. But I also agree with Johnny and goes back to the original point. You shouldn't be picking lads for that reason, really. So I can see how this is played out. I don't think there's any real blame on anyone's side here. It's just again, it's the adaptability of the eligibility laws. In fact, it does for 3 countries, and it is what it is. Yeah, we'll just see how it plays out.
It's just another very, very normal week in Irish rugby. We'll finish it up here with 3 very, very quick predictions. I just want winners of the 3 games this weekend. First up, Johnny, Wales against Italy in Cardiff.
Italy.
Bernard? Italy?
Yeah, Italy, yeah.
Italy. Okay, so Wales wooden spoon. Ireland versus Scotland, Johnny?
Ireland.
And Friday, Le Crunch in Lyon, France against England.
England.
Right, there we have it. 3 wins for 2 away wins, 1 home win. Ireland wins is the prediction. Wales against Italy, 2:15. That is live on RT2 and RT Player, as is France against England, 8 o'clock. And you can follow a live blog of France and England on the RT Sport app. And there's also live commentary as well of Ireland and Scotland from 4 p.m. On Saturday Sport on RTE Radio 1. We will speak to you very, very soon. Bernard, enjoy the rest of the week at Cheltenham. And Johnny, enjoy your house. Good luck, fella.
Thanks. Enjoy, Bert.